Hey everyone, welcome to the 3D-Fueled show, a show all about 3D printing, small business ownership, marketing, e-commerce, and manufacturing in the USA. I know we cover a lot of stuff. On this week's episode, we're going to be mainly talking about the recap from Formnext 2025. So I'm recording this about, almost 2 weeks after we returned from Formnext. This was my first time attending. I'm also going to be trying to do something a little bit differently here in terms of how to capture video for the for this episode. Of course, I'm trying to do the same thing with my my normal camera, but I took a lot of videos and photos when I was over in Formnext, and so I'm going to try and capture that too. For this episode, we're mainly going to be going through all of those videos and photos that I took. So we're going to be going kind of almost one by one, just going through this and seeing how this was. So Formnext, for those of you that aren't aware, it's one of the biggest 3D printing trade shows in the world. It takes place in Frankfurt, Germany, and it's been there for quite some time. This was my first time ever attending. I've never had the opportunity to attend before, let alone exhibit there. And even though I've been in the 3D printing industry for over a decade now, it's been one of those things where I've either been so buried with work, not to say I'm not busy right now, but I either didn't have a good solid team in place, or I was working for a company where it just didn't make sense to send me over there for, at least related to the work that I was doing. First of all, Formnext is spread over kind of 4 main halls. You have 2 different buildings, and each building has 2 different levels to it. There was a lot to see. There were also a lot of product announcements, and there wasn't really any one single thing that I was here to see or here to. The cats are fighting. That I was here to see or to learn about. I mean, of course, I knew that BambuLab was going to be unveiling the H2C. There's a lot of product announcements that happen at the show. Prusa unveiling their partnership with Bondtech. But this is also a place where, because so many people in the industry come here at the same time. Oh my gosh, cats. They're now Petunia is now chasing our old man Chan around the basement right now, and Chan is just not having it. So if you hear some literal cat fighting going on in the background, Petunia is just playing quite aggressively. Because so many people are all in the same place at the same time, it's a great way to be setting up meetings that I mean, there are people that I was visiting with that I wouldn't have been able to justify a single trip, a flight to visit them. And I'm not just talking about people that are located in the EU, but also people that are located in America, because they're all going to this show too, whether they are there to be creating content, whether they're there because they're there with a company that is unveiling a new product, or they're announcing a new type of partnership. It's just something where, we're able to have everyone in the same place at the same time. So you get a lot of that cross-pollination that you wouldn't get otherwise. It's the same reason that I like going to 3D Printopia type events, because I get to talk with competitors. I get to talk with other companies that are doing similar work to what I'm doing. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how this capture side of things works. So I thought this was kind of cool. This was part of the Colorfabb booth. Colorfabb, they're based in the Netherlands. They're another filament manufacturer who's been doing things for about as long as I've been. Actually, I would say a little bit longer that they've been making filament. So that was a model of their 3D printed model of one of their extrusion lines. So 3Dvo, if you're not familiar with what they do, they basically make small desktop style extruders. They make more targeted at the recycling industry. So we're talking people that have print farms. They want to be shredding their own waste, and they want to be it's made for people that are trying to make their own filament. So you can see here that this is a new type of laser scanner. I think it's a laser scanner, some type of diameter scanner. So you can be verifying as you're making filament, kind of, is your diameter in spec? Is it not in spec? Because of course these are extrusion lines that are they're desktop size, so they're making filament at a much slower rate than something that we would be doing. A lot of their desktop extruders are anywhere from, let's say, 0.5 kilogram per hour to maybe 3 kilograms per hour. This here is silicone 3D printing. I believe this was at I think this was actually at the Prusa booth. So this was showing off the kind of their new partnership that they have with another, basically for their Prusa XL, they have a new type of tool head that is able to 3D print silicone right on the Prusa XL. This was part of the Creality booth, and it's always really cool when you see 3D printing companies that have these massive kind of displays. So that was part I could have swore I took a longer video about this because it's a really cool layout with, I think it's a Model N, or excuse me, an N scale model railroad layout. So they have this whole cityscape. They have all of the supports that are holding up the different pieces of track. Very cool. Now this was at the Prusa booth, and we're talking with them about their OpenTag format on the Prusamint side of things. So you can actually see the 3D-Fueled logo right there. This is something else that Prusa has been, or that I think they unveiled this at the show, or the newer version of this. So this is kind of their automated print farm setup. Now this is not something that's brand new. They have been doing an automated print farm setup. I think they unveiled it before they even had the Prusa XL, and then the Prusa XL was kind of born out of that. But this is their latest and greatest iteration of that. So you can see they have all of the empty build plates there. They load the filament from the back, and then the finished prints will be over here on the left-hand side. So this way you can have basically lights out manufacturing, where you have a printer that is just running overnight. It'll automatically change the build plate out. You don't need to have any employees there to be keeping an eye on things. And then you come in the next day and you have all these finished build plates, take all your parts off, and everything just keeps on going. This was, I believe, part of the BambuLab booth. So this is very cool. They have their, they have their CyberBrick, and so you're able to 3D print different things. So they're having a little challenge here about how people could be, different people operating remote control forklifts that were 3D printed using that CyberBrick. It's kind of a fun display. And again, another big cityscape that really shows off what the printers are capable of. This I thought was really interesting, and it's something that I'm a little surprised that there's not more focus on. Is the is sign printing for 3D printed channel letters, for example. That's what this is showing off. That's why you don't have a very tall Z-axis. But they're doing something cool, not just with the hardware, but also with the software that they're using. They're trying to make this more approachable for a specific industry. CR3D, this is a very ruggedized 3D printer. I think this is a little bit overkill, but still kind of cool to show off what the what it's able to do. And then over by the Prusa booth, sitting right next to the BondTech booth, this was their BondTech INDX system that was covered up with a sheet that first day. And this was some of the first footage of the BambuLab H2C. This video in particular, we're not going to watch the whole thing because it was kind of, basically, there wasn't really a material change happening in this video, and there's going to be enough BambuLab H2C content coming up very soon. We actually, shortly after this video comes out, we will have our H2C profiles available for standard PLA+, Tough Pro PLA+, and Pro PCTG, of course. So pretty excited about that, and in a variety of nozzle diameters too. This is a 3D printer that is specialized for 3D printing insoles. So this is, I think, another Creality printer. Yeah, so Creality, they have kind of this sub-brand called PyleCreate, and it's focused more on that medical and O&P side of the industry. This was in the Colorfabb booth. So this is I believe this is actually a Zellerfeld shoe. So Zellerfeld, they are a company, they're going to be huge. Zellerfeld is doing 3D printed apparel and 3D printed footwear. I mean, they've partnered with Nike. They are doing this in a very big way. They actually have an Austin, Texas facility, even though they're a German company. They're adding that US manufacturing. I think Colorfabb is even going to be, well, I don't know how much I can talk about that. I know some things. But very, very cool thing that they have going on. And so this video, I think, did it just finish playing? Let's play it again. So it's very squishy. So it's not just about the material itself, but it's also the manner in which it's 3D printed. And that's one of the Zellerfeld secret sauces, is not just the material, but that they figured out how to do this, that they can vary how squishy or how soft or how spongy the different parts of the shoe are. And then there's the hardware too, because printing something, a material like this, you kind of need to be a bit specialized. A lot of large format 3D printing, a lot of pellet-fed 3D printers. I mean, to the point where I don't fully understand who is who's printing all of this, or who's buying these 3D printers, and the people that are buying them. I don't fully understand what industries they're going into. Now that could just be my ignorance. It very likely is my ignorance, clearly, but I don't quite get it, because these are not small systems. These are not inexpensive systems. And there were a lot of companies that were exhibiting these, basically you have a big extruder, a pellet extruder on the end of a robot arm, whether that is, like a gantry style or whether that was like a 5-axis robot arm. So I don't fully understand that. Polymaker, this was kind of cool. I like how they display their materials comparison, and this in particular was kind of showing the relationship between heat resistance and stiffness. So we may take, we may kind of take a little bit of what they're doing, kind of crib that whole style of sheet, which I think is pretty cool. This must have been, I think, yeah, the spectrum filaments. This, I think, just from a marketing standpoint, is a very, very cool thing to have set up. How they have, it was this very retro coffee bar that they had set up, just with all of the different colors. And that is a color that we need to come out with in PCTG, that style of pink and that shade of blue. This was something else that was a little interesting to me. I didn't realize that Kimya had been effectively acquired by Airtech. So Kimya is a French filament manufacturer. They do a lot of high-end materials. So a lot of high temperature, a lot of fiber-filled materials. And I know that them going out of business was a big deal last year. I think it was last year that they announced that they were going to be closing down. I am glad that someone picked up the product portfolio. And I know that Airtech was looking at having us do some filament for them at some point. Well, that might have been when I was working at Ascentium, but they were looking at getting into filament manufacturing with some of their materials. So it's good to see that they've decided to move forward with that. This, I wish I would have. I think James Bruton was in this booth, and I really wish I would have stuck around here a little bit more. One, I'm a huge Lego nut, and two, this is just cool. Like, I love the projects where it is an extra large, an extra supersized version of Lego bricks printed in a project. This is another really cool thing from the Creality booth. This is, I believe, also from their PioCreate line. You can see the logo right there. So this is a pellet-fed 3D printer. Now, I haven't really seen this printing a whole lot at shows. I remember seeing it at Rapid. This may be something that we actually look into just to try out, see how it works, printing with PCTG in pellet form. That could be really interesting, especially now that we're coming out with the fiber-filled materials and the fiber-filled versions of those. This is a better shot of the Creality booth and that landscape and cityscape that they have laid out. Very cool. Kind of want one of these for my basement. So this is a better look at the 3Devo booth. This is not available in product form yet, this air cooling system, but what they're doing is they're taking waste from the SLS laser sintering, so basically powdered nylon. You can't reuse all of the leftover powder from these nylon systems, and because they've just been exposed to too much heat and they might have started clumping up together. And if you have if the pellets are too big, or the little grains of powder are too big, then you're not able to get the precision that you need for doing the laser sintering. So the fact that people are able to reuse that, turn it into FDM filament, is a really good thing. This was back in the Colorfabb booth again, just looking at this print. So printed in their VarioShore TPU, Zellerfoam, which is a specialized, I think it's kind of like VarioShore, which is really cool. This was another thing that I thought was interesting, and I think you could have an entire business based just around this, doing custom inserts. This was at the Mosaic manufacturing booth, and it's I think it's one of the TPUs that they have as a filament. Another shot of the 3Devo booth. So this, I'm actually going to back up a little bit. So here, this is an integrated, you basically throw your scrap 3D printed parts in there, and it will shred in the first stage and then granulate in the second stage. So basically it breaks it down into, shreds it, then gets it into smaller chunks, and then you're able to take that, feed it into the 3Devo filament extruder, and start making that into the filament. Another little shot of the Colorfabb production line 3D printed model. We actually had one of these when we had our production facility in Fargo before. It's so the company that makes this is called LabTech. They're a Thailand-based company, and I mean, it was fine. Like it's fine. It's not who we're using right now for our production line equipment, but I mean, very good longevity. When I was talking with Colorfabb, they mentioned that their very first LabTech extrusion line, it's still in service today. Like, they are still using it almost a decade later. So that's pretty impressive when it comes to the hardware quality side. OpenPrintTag. Now this was some free earned media. So by working with these guys, I mean it got so even though 3D-Fueled we didn't have a booth here, we still had a presence at Rapid, which was kind of cool to be able to have have our logo showing up. This is another shot of that 3D filament recycler. That's from the Prusa booth, and then OpenPrintTag. There's the 3D-Fueled logo again. So again, we're still working on some details about this, but I think that there's a lot of really good potential here. This was interesting. I believe this was the Recrius booth. So 3D printing TPU has always been a bit of a challenge because to be able to 3D print with 1.75 millimeter filament, you hit kind of a lower limit on how low the shore hardness or how soft the part can be is. And if you get too soft, then pushing the filament is like pushing a wet noodle. You're just not able to get the amount of force that you need. You're not able to constrain the filament path well enough. Now, that's one of the reasons why some people still keep a 2.85 millimeter 3D printer around. And this is where Lulzbot really got a lot of good reviews, is on their ability to 3D print TPUs. Now this was back, I mean, we're talking back in 2014, I remember. It was either 2014 or 2015 is when they had their, I can't remember what it was called exactly, but it was a TPU specific extruder. So a very tightly constrained filament path. And because it was 2.85 millimeter filament, you could push it with a standard hobbed bolt extruder without too much issue. So Recrius sees that 2.85 millimeter, it's too large in diameter, you have a tougher time melting it, but 1.75 millimeter, too thin, can't push the filament effectively enough. So they're coming out with this new standard, and they have, I don't know, I mean, we'll see how it takes off. If it starts if it starts taking off, it may be something that we pursue as well, but this is one we're just gonna kind of sit back and watch. 3Devo booth again. I didn't realize how big of a team they had or how big of a booth that they would be capable of having. I always thought of them as a smaller operation, but again, being at these shows, this kind of demonstrates how much larger some of these companies are. I do think that why I thought they had a smaller presence is their attendance at US shows, because I believe they're an EU-based company. They wouldn't, of course, have as big of a booth in the US because that takes more to ship over. You have to have a larger team come over. Travel expenses would be higher. So the 2.2 millimeter Revolution. So they are, as part of this, you need to have a hot end that can accommodate a 2.2 millimeter diameter filament. And they have hot ends for they have hot ends for a wide variety of printers, or a growing variety of printers. The BambuLab printer is what they were showing off first. And they claim that you'll be able to run a 2.2 millimeter diameter filament and a 1.75 millimeter diameter filament through the same hot end. So again, we'll see how that goes. This is a good example of how some of these large format pellet-based 3D printers are working. So it's a two-stage process. First, you 3D print your near net part. So if we look here, okay, so this was in that Airtech booth. So you 3D print as close as you can to the part, but then you run a CNC machine over the rest of it, and that's how you get that smooth finish. This was another type of printer, large format, but this was printing in a foam material, almost like a styrofoam insulation type material. Again, I'm not quite sure what the application of something like this is, but clearly there is an application. Otherwise, I don't think they would have developed this entire platform for it. I mean, the motion system is going to be pretty standard across a wide variety of industries, but the like the tool head, the actual extruder part of it, that I'm less clear about. So this was an interesting application of these large format 3D printers. Basically 3D printing the entire hull of a boat in one piece. This is something that could start taking off more. So Fargo, North Dakota, we're located not very far from Minnesota. Obviously, we're neighbors, but there's a lot of boat manufacturing that happens over in the New York Mills area of Minnesota. So I'm curious how this could start being disruptive to their industry and what they're currently doing for things like fiberglass hulls, because there's a decent amount of labor involved in that. I just don't know if this saves enough labor for it to be justified in them starting to switch over to something like this. Same thing, another just set of really big parts. I'm just not sure who's going to be paying what you would need to pay for the printer plus the specialized manufacturing skills that it takes to make something like this versus just the manufacturing methods we already have. More drones and drone interceptors, OpenPrintTag. All right, here's the index. I don't think I was able to capture the index actually changing, but almost as interesting as the index itself to me is the are these new filament, basically filament dry boxes that that Prusa has. So my understanding is it seals perfectly once it's dried, helps keep your filament dry, helps keep it dry as it's 3D printing, obviously, because for using something like the index, if you have 8 different hot ends on here, you're going to need 8 different spools of filament to fully take advantage of it. And because of how the Core 1 is set up, the spools are on the exterior of the printer. So you need to be able to protect them from the elements somehow. And this is how they're doing it. Prusa Pro. This was the H2C doing a multi-material print, and I wasn't able to capture too much of the tool head changing. But again, there's so much footage out there. Thought this was an interesting chair, but you know they're saying that, all right, this chair for sale for only $1,000. Who's paying $1,000 for this chair? Again, I could be missing something here. Clearly, someone thinks it's worth $1,000. It's just not me. So here's some more footage of the index, but unfortunately, I don't think I caught it when it was, I guess it just switched there, but I don't think I caught it doing another switch. The index is something that I'm actually more excited about than the Bambu H2C, because I think properly implemented, this is going to be a considerable time savings over what the H2C is able to do. Like the big downside to the H2C is that you still need to use the AMS to draw the filament back. You still need to retract it into the AMS unit, and then you need to push the next filament through. So even though like your hot end change doesn't take very long, and you know thankfully you're not having to take the time to purge the new filament through, you don't have that purge poop waste. You still have all of this time that's wasted. So maybe they'll have a different type of AMS that will work better. It'll have a shorter path to the hot ends. Spent a little bit of time at the Mosaic booth. This I think is kind of cool. I think this is a material. It's a flexible material that they have. I think they call it E-Twill. So they do a lot of like direct 3D printing right on fabric with it. So I know they work with some some sporting goods and jersey manufacturers in Canada, and they're able to use this to effectively eliminate the otherwise embroidered appliques that would go onto jerseys. So the numbers, the names, etc. Oh, actually, I don't think they 3D print directly onto the fabric. I think they are just 3D printing the appliques, and then they get sewn onto the jerseys. But still, it's faster and they're more flexible in terms of their timeline and logistics. Because I think before, those jersey companies were having these appliques embroidered in China, having to wait for them to get to Canada, and then having to sew them onto the jerseys. All right, this was the BambuLab reveal. There's Pavel. If you spend any amount of time on LinkedIn and do any 3D printing, you know who Pavel is. He's been very prolific the last couple of years, and now he's basically like not a community engagement person for Prusa in the EU. So he's located in Poland, but he focuses more on just like helping people. Focuses more on helping people use the BambuLab printers, showing off what the printers are capable of to encourage greater adoption of those printers within those countries. So the Prusa Core 1, I know that there were some people complaining about the fact that the stock hot end doesn't hit 300 degrees Celsius, and this is why. I don't think it's to sell people on an upgrade for the printer, but I think it's because 300 degrees Celsius isn't enough to 3D print some of the higher end materials that you need, or it's at the very, very low end of what those materials need to print effectively. And so I think Prusa's approach is they'd rather have a hot end that only goes up to like 290, and then you can't print with something like PEC or PPACF, because otherwise if you printed with it, you might have very poor layer adhesion because there's not enough heat being imparted into it. So they'd rather you upgrade to a 400 degrees Celsius hot end, be printing it at 350 degrees Celsius, or a correct temperature for it, so you have a really, really good part out of the gate for it. Of course, there is always the potential that Prusa is just trying to sell upgrades, but I don't know. That doesn't quite seem to fit with their business model. So this is interesting. This is a company that I've been talking with for about 2 years now. So they're an automated winder manufacturer for filament production lines. The big challenge we're running into right now in doing something like this is the cost of the equipment is not inexpensive. In fact, this winder costs more than the entirety of one of our production lines, and that's just the winder. So I still have to have the production line, and then I have to have the winder. And so we're trying to make sure that this is going to work with our production equipment, that it works with the spools that we have, because if it doesn't, then I can't justify spending money on that. This is another interesting piece of automation. So this is basically it enables automation for the Formlabs Fuse 1. I overheard a salesperson talking about this, that this entire setup is about $160,000, and about $100,000 or $120,000 of that is just the robot arm and the programming. So that's not then the balance of that is the printer itself. So I mean, you gotta really be doing a lot of production to justify that. Birds aren't real, man. Like, if I know it's kind of a silly conspiracy theory, but this is, you show this to one of those conspiracy theorists and they're going to be like, see, I told you that birds aren't real. They're drones. This is another company that makes a, kind of like its own desktop extruder, but this is more of an open source. I don't know if it's truly open source, but a lot of the components on here are 3D printed. They basically will sell you all of the non-3D printed components. You can 3D print the rest yourself. We actually have a customer that buys some of our refuel pellets, or our refuel in pellet form, before we even turn it back into filament. And then he has one of these, and he's built one, and he makes his own filament at home, which to me, that seems like a lot of work for what it is. But if you like doing it, you like doing it. So this is that automated spool winder, Philo. So showing how it gets started. Now, if we were running this in actual production, it would be, the speeds would be a little bit different, the rates would be a little different, but it's just showing how this mechanism works. And it has this notch in it that is how it secures the filament at the end of the spool. And they've gone through a few different iterations of this. The BambuLab H2C launch, I don't even know why I bothered walking over here, because there were so many people. Like, this does not give justice to how many people were at this launch. And from the sounds of it, their actual launch video wasn't able to be played because AWS or Cloudflare or something was down that day. And I thought that they were going to have some sort of speaker. I thought there was going to be video playing on those monitors up above. So basically, I was sitting back in the crowd, and I got there 10 minutes before the announcement happened. But I was sitting back in the crowd. You couldn't see anything from back where I was standing. So you can see that they have the printers covered up under the sheets there. I had to come back hours later in the day just to be able to get close enough to get a peek. I got more out of going to the BambuLab website and seeing it there. This, I think, is interesting. The different shades of skin tone for 3D printed prosthetics. So this may be something that we explore. I'd say at this point in time, we have about half of these, maybe even a little more than half of these shades already in our lineup. We just don't call them skin tones, but it could be something worth exploring. Oh, this was another thing that was really exciting. So Helio Additive, and we have a press release coming up about this. Helio Additive, it basically is a simulation and an optimization. I don't want to call it an AI necessarily, but it will analyze. So how this works is they will do they'll do an analysis of the material, and then they'll do so that's what we've done. We've partnered with them. They have had our material. They've done a characterization of the material, and then they're able to plug that into their tool. And right now, it just works in BambuLab Slicer, so in Bamboo Studio. I think they're also working on Orca Slicer, and they're working on some more things here. But this allows them to do like a thermal analysis and change things like the print speed to help you get a stronger part, to help you get a faster printing part. We hope to have a lot more to share about that in the next week here. But this is very exciting. As you can see, we're the first non-BambuLab, non-Polymaker material as part of this partnership. And Helio has a very tight connection to Bamboo and Polymaker, and Bamboo and Polymaker have a very tight connection between themselves. So this is very exciting. Right now, they just have mostly the older generation of printers, but they're going to be adding more of the new ones. And they're running into some of the same things that we run into right now, where they need to know what the printers are capable of. So just like doing a characterization of the material, they also need to do a characterization of the printer itself in order to have this this optimization work correctly. Here's a good example of that E-Twill material. So this was 3D printed and then sewn onto the jersey later by Mosaic. I'm a little disappointed. I didn't get to talk to the Mosaic team as much as I would have liked. They were pretty busy. They were, every time I went by there, the people that I knew from other events, they were all busy talking with customers, and I was not about to interrupt that. So that is all of the content that I had from Formnext. So again, this was more of a Formnext update show. It took me a long time to kind of dig out from everything that I had going on, just to get caught up on emails. And I was still trying to catch up on emails while I was over there and on the flights and all of that. So we had a lot of time to be doing that, and still I'm buried under things. We're so close to getting the next couple of production lines up and running, working on profiles for the new printers. When BambuLab announced the H2C at the show, it was not available for purchase in the United States. My understanding is that that was for the same reason that the P2S was not available for purchase in the United States at that same time. I think it came down to the US not recognizing electrical test results or electric signal test results. It was either like an RF signal thing because it has Wi-Fi chips in it, or it had to do with the power testing. And normally they would use a lab in China to do that, just going to the American standards, and typically that's been good enough. But now with the US being the US, they're like, it has to be done by a US lab, blah, blah, blah. So I think the second day of Formnext, then it was available both for the H2C and the P2S. So that would have been on Wednesday, I think. And the Monday that we returned, so less than a week later, we had the H2C and the P2S delivered to our facility. And then the day after that, on Tuesday, we had the Snapmaker U1 delivered. So we backed that. We were one of the super early bird backers of that Kickstarter. So I've been very busy working on those profiles. We have them done for the Snapmaker U1. They're just not up on the website yet. Same thing for the BambuLab H2C. I haven't even had a chance to unbox the P2S yet, just because I have limited desk space and I wanted to focus on no more than 2 printers at a time. And then we also need to go through and update so many of our other profiles. I know some of you have asked, John, you said you updated profiles for the H2D, for the A1, for the X1 carbon, etc. Yes, the 0.4 millimeter nozzles, but I haven't had a chance to update for the 0.6, for the 0.8, for the 0.2. So believe me, I'm working on it. There have just been so many other projects at the shop that I'm focusing on right now. I just haven't had time. Also, I'm not going to do a Q&A answer this week. Just this show is already going to be probably around half an hour long. There's stuff I've got to cut out. There's a bunch of editing. I'm going to try and get back to the regular release schedule next week. And I know the holidays are going to disrupt that. There's just no way around that. But I hope that you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about things from Formnext or anything else, please leave a question or a comment down below. I hope to be able to answer as many of them as I can as you're posting them on the video, but then I'll also answer them in next week's video. I hope to have even more exciting things to share next week. But thank you again for watching, or if you're just listening to this, just tuning in and listening. And happy 3D printing, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.